Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The morning at Jabot Cosmetics began like any other, with the bustling energy of employees hurrying through the glass corridors, the smell of freshly brewed coffee lingering in the air, the soft clatter of keyboards, and the faint rustle of papers as executives reviewed reports. But the serenity was about to shatter in ways nobody could have anticipated as Victoria Newman, ever vigilant yet exhausted from the relentless pressures of managing the company alongside her volatile family, received an urgent call that would set off a chain of catastrophic revelations, a call that came from the firm's accountants who, in hushed tones, detailed that Jabot was on the verge of declaring bankruptcy, a declaration that would not only destabilize the empire that had been meticulously built over decades but also expose the underlying betrayals that had long been lurking beneath the polished veneer of corporate civility. And as Victoria absorbed the news, her mind raced through the possibilities, imagining the financial ruin cascading like a tidal wave across the assets, the stockholders' panic, the legal implications, and most importantly, the personal betrayals that had been festering. For behind this financial collapse was not merely poor management or economic misfortune, but the cunning and deliberate sabotage orchestrated by none other than Diane Jenkins, whose seemingly charming demeanor had long masked a calculating and ruthless ambition. And it was Diane who had quietly maneuvered Jabot into a perilous position, exploiting weaknesses in the company's accounting procedures, diverting funds under the guise of legitimate business transactions, and enlisting a web of collaborators whose loyalty to her, rather than to Jabot, ensured that every step the company took brought it closer to financial annihilation. And as the news spread through the corridors, whispers filled the air, employees exchanging nervous glances, some in disbelief, others in shock, while whispers of Diane's true nature began to surface, the long-hidden manipulations that had allowed her to wield influence over key decisions, to subtly undermine Victoria's authority, to charm executives into complacency while steering contracts into her own favor. And the culmination of years of deceit now stood naked before the entire Newman family, leaving Victoria to grapple with the bitter truth that the woman she had once considered an ally, even a friend, was in reality a master of treachery, whose ambitions knew no bounds and whose actions threatened not only the company but the very legacy of the Newman family. And in the midst of this storm, Jack Abbott, ever the vigilant rival and shrewd businessman, saw an opportunity to capitalize on Jabot's vulnerability, his mind calculating the advantages, the potential mergers, the chance to claim a part of the empire that had been the envy of Genoa City. But even as he considered his moves, he could not ignore the human element, the collateral damage that Diane's betrayal would inflict on employees who had devoted their lives to the company, and on Victoria, whose heart was as invested in Jabot as her mind, whose loyalty to her family was about to be tested in ways that transcended boardroom politics. As she summoned the courage to confront Diane directly, seeking answers, explanations, or perhaps some shred of remorse, but Diane, ever composed and theatrically innocent, feigned ignorance, weaving an elaborate narrative designed to confuse, deflect, and manipulate, claiming that the bankruptcy was the result of market fluctuations, poor economic climate, and unanticipated expenses, attempting to shift blame from her meticulously laid plans to circumstances beyond her control. Yet Victoria, guided by a combination of intuition, experience, and the counsel of trusted allies like Nikki Newman and Phyllis Summers, saw through the facade, recognizing the subtle cues, the fleeting smirk, the hesitation before speaking, the glint of pride in her eyes when discussing financial dealings, that betrayed Diane's calculated orchestration. And as the confrontation escalated, tempers flared, voices rose, accusations were hurled with the intensity of pent-up frustrations, and the office itself seemed to vibrate with tension, the air thick with the weight of betrayal, fear, and the uncertainty of the future. And outside the walls of Jabot, Genoa City itself felt the ripple effects, as news of the impending bankruptcy leaked, spreading through social circles, gossip columns, and the local media, each outlet eager to dissect the scandal, speculate on the motives, and predict the fallout, while Diane, always mindful of her public image, maintained an impeccable composure, projecting innocence to the outside world even as inside she celebrated the strategic brilliance of her deception. Yet the battle was far from over, for Victoria, with a renewed sense of purpose, rallied her allies, analyzing every financial report, consulting legal experts, and plotting a path not just to salvage Jabot, but to hold Diane accountable for the treachery that had threatened to destroy an empire. And as the legal battles loomed on the horizon, each day brought new revelations, emails, secret bank statements, forged contracts that painted an ever clearer picture of Diane's manipulation. And in private, family members weighed their loyalties, questioned their judgments, and contemplated the fine line between justice and revenge, while the city watched with bated breath, drawn into the drama that unfolded like a storm, unpredictable, violent, yet irresistibly compelling. As alliances shifted, friendships were tested, and the true faces of those involved were revealed in a relentless parade of ambition, deception, courage, and resilience. And amidst this chaos, Victoria discovered an inner strength she had not fully recognized before, her determination to restore Jabot and expose Diane burning like a beacon, guiding her through sleepless nights filled with strategy sessions, confidential meetings, and heart-to-heart discussions with those she trusted, each step forward uncovering further evidence of Diane's betrayal, from clandestine financial transactions routed through offshore accounts to covert attempts to manipulate stockholder opinions and influence board decisions. And as the net tightened, Diane's composure began to crack, subtle signs of panic emerging, a flicker of doubt in her eyes when confronted with incontrovertible proof, a trembling in her voice as she denied the undeniable. And finally, when the documents were laid bare in the boardroom, when the numbers could no longer be disputed, Diane's carefully constructed mask of charm shattered, revealing the raw ambition, the greed, and the duplicity that had driven her actions, leaving everyone present in stunned silence, the enormity of the betrayal hanging heavy in the air. And yet, even in this moment of triumph for Victoria and Jabot's loyal team, the aftermath loomed. A web of lawsuits, potential criminal charges, and the painstaking process of rebuilding not just financial stability but trust, reputation, and morale, as employees grappled with the implications of Diane's deceit, questioning their own judgments, relationships, and the future of the company they had dedicated themselves to. And through it all, Victoria emerged not just as a leader fighting for her company, but as a symbol of resilience, intelligence, and moral clarity, showing that even in the face of treachery from someone as calculating as Diane Jenkins, integrity, courage, and determination could prevail. And as Genoa City absorbed the shockwaves of the scandal, the saga of Jabot, Diane, and Victoria became yet another legendary chapter in the ever-twisting, ever-turning drama of the young and the restless, reminding everyone that in a world where ambition, loyalty, and deception constantly collide, the line between ally and adversary is perilously thin, the consequences of betrayal devastatingly real, and the fight for truth, justice, and survival a never-ending, riveting spectacle that leaves no heart untouched and no life unchanged. As the dust settled from the revelation of Diane's betrayal, Victoria Newman found herself at the epicenter of a storm that seemed to grow with each passing hour. For Jabot was not just a company but a symbol of the Newman family's legacy, a legacy built on ambition, resilience, and relentless pursuit of excellence, and now threatened by the treachery of someone who had managed to worm her way into the heart of the operation with a smile and a charm that masked a calculating mind. And while Victoria had exposed Diane in the boardroom, the reverberations of that moment extended far beyond the walls of Jabot, reaching every corner of Genoa City, where rumors spread like wildfire. Employees whispered in fearful tones about who could be trusted, who might have been complicit in Diane's schemes, and which other allies might harbor hidden agendas. And even as Victoria strategized her next moves, calling in experts to review the company's finances, auditing every account, and consulting with attorneys to determine legal remedies, Diane was not idle. Instead, she retreated to her own circle of confidants, manipulating social media, planting stories with gossip columnists, and subtly trying to turn public opinion against Victoria, portraying herself as the misunderstood executive, unfairly targeted in a corporate smear campaign, her every action calculated to sow confusion, doubt, and discord among Jabot's remaining allies. And this psychological chess game escalated quickly as Diane sent carefully worded emails to board members, suggesting alternative explanations for the company's bankruptcy, insinuating that Victoria's leadership might be unstable, reckless, and partially responsible for the collapse, thereby attempting to regain influence by undermining confidence in Victoria's capabilities. Yet Victoria, ever sharp and increasingly hardened by the betrayal, refused to be intimidated, meeting each ploy with meticulous evidence, counter-memos, and strategic Communications that not only documented Diane's sabotage but also highlighted her manipulative tactics, all while maintaining a composed, professional demeanor that masked the whirlwind of anger, disappointment, and betrayal churning inside her. And as Victoria's inner circle convened, Nikki Newman offering unwavering support and moral guidance, Phyllis Summers providing strategic insights rooted in her experience navigating corporate politics, and even Jack Abbott reluctantly advising on countermoves. The tension was palpable, each discussion layered with personal stakes, old grudges, and the shared desire to protect the company at all costs. While outside, the media frenzy intensified, news outlets publishing speculative headlines, talk shows debating Diane's motives and Victoria's next steps, and social media platforms buzzing with memes, hot takes, and amateur detective work as Genoa City's citizens tried to make sense of the scandal that had consumed one of the city's most prestigious companies. And amidst all this chaos, Diane executed a series of clandestine maneuvers, including leveraging her insider knowledge to acquire small but critical shares in Jabot through proxies, arranging secret meetings with vendors to manipulate contract obligations, and subtly spreading misinformation among long-standing clients to destabilize revenue streams, actions that demonstrated her willingness to risk legal repercussions to reclaim control. And as Victoria uncovered these additional layers of deception, she realized that the battle was no longer just about financial recovery, but about exposing a level of betrayal that threatened to redefine trust, loyalty, and ethical boundaries within her world. And it was during this period of heightened tension that other Genoa City players began to take sides, each with their own agendas. Billy Abbott, ever torn between family loyalty and business interests, struggled with the question of whether to support Victoria fully or consider alliances with parties who might protect his own investments. Lily Winters, known for her intelligence and moral clarity, stepped in as a confidant and advisor, helping Victoria navigate the increasingly complex web of deceit, while even characters like Phyllis Summers and Jack Abbott found their loyalties tested as personal histories with Diane and Victoria resurfaced, bringing old wounds, unresolved conflicts, and subtle jealousies into play, further complicating the already volatile corporate battlefield. And as Victoria dug deeper, she discovered that Diane's manipulations extended far beyond the company's financials, touching personal relationships, reputations, and social connections, including discreet attempts to discredit Victoria with key philanthropic donors, orchestrate rumors about romantic entanglements, and subtly manipulate family members through charm, guilt, and flattery, demonstrating that Diane's ambitions were not merely corporate but deeply personal, aiming to destabilize Victoria's life entirely. And as the board meetings became increasingly confrontational, with Diane attempting to present her narrative while Victoria countered with precise data, evidence, and witnesses, the tension reached its peak during a particularly dramatic session when Diane, emboldened, tried to sway shareholders by claiming that Victoria's emotional involvement in the company clouded her judgment, only to be shut down by Victoria's detailed exposé, which included bank statements, email correspondences, and testimonies from employees who had directly witnessed Diane's interference, the room charged with electricity as each accusation and rebuttal landed, revealing Diane's true nature not just to the board but to every observer, including the media representatives present, whose notes and cameras captured every dramatic exchange for the public record. And as Diane's carefully constructed image began to crumble under the weight of facts, she resorted to increasingly desperate measures, from covertly attempting to alter documents to making anonymous threats aimed at intimidating Victoria's allies, while Victoria, sensing the escalation, tightened security, increased surveillance on key communications, and worked tirelessly to ensure that Diane's manipulations could not continue unchecked, even as she balanced the emotional toll of betrayal, family pressures, and the responsibility of saving a company teetering on the brink. And in the midst of this high-stakes corporate war, personal lives intersected with business realities in ways that heightened the drama. Friendships were tested as confidences were shared, and broken romantic relationships became strained under the pressure of divided loyalties, and family bonds were pushed to their limits as each member of the Newman and Abbott families grappled with questions of trust, responsibility, and justice. And it was during this turbulent period that an unexpected ally emerged, someone who had long remained in the shadows of Genoa City's corporate politics, bringing with them critical evidence that linked Diane not only to Jabot's financial sabotage but to a series of manipulations affecting multiple companies across the city. a revelation that expanded the scope of Diane's treachery, transforming the conflict from a personal vendetta into a citywide corporate scandal. And as Victoria coordinated with legal teams, investigative journalists, and her closest allies, she began to systematically dismantle Diane's network of influence, unveiling a complex tapestry of deceit that included offshore accounts, shell corporations, and clandestine agreements, designed to enrich Diane at the expense of Jabot. And as the evidence mounted, Diane's confidence waned, her attempts at charm and deflection increasingly transparent, and finally, during a climactic confrontation orchestrated by Victoria and witnessed by the company's board, key shareholders, and select media representatives, Diane's manipulations were exposed in full, her every move documented and presented with irrefutable clarity, leaving her with no option but to confront the consequences of years of calculated deception. And yet even in the face of exposure, Diane's cunning and audacity remained evident as she sought to negotiate, deflect blame, and salvage any remaining advantage, a testament to her skill in manipulation. But Victoria, strengthened by the support of her allies, her moral certainty, and the undeniable evidence, refused to allow Diane another escape, ultimately setting the stage for a resolution that would not only restore Jabot's stability but reaffirm the values of loyalty, integrity, and resilience, while Genoa City watched, riveted, as a saga of betrayal, ambition, and courage reached a turning point, proving that in a world where power and deception constantly collide, the forces of truth and justice, though challenged, can ultimately prevail, leaving a lasting impression on the lives of everyone involved, and setting the tone for the next chapter in the ever-dramatic, endlessly enthralling life of the young and the restless. Even as Diane Jenkins faced the unraveling of her schemes in the glare of the boardroom and under the scrutiny of Genoa City's media, the ripples of her treachery extended far beyond the office walls, seeping into the lives of everyone who had even the smallest connection to Jabot Cosmetics. And for Victoria Newman, the battle was far from over, as the company's employees, though relieved to see Diane exposed, now faced the daunting reality of the financial instability that threatened their livelihoods. And as Victoria moved to reassure her staff, walking through the corridors of Jabot with her characteristic determination, she felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders, each step echoing the dual burdens of restoring corporate stability and repairing the emotional trust that Diane had so carefully dismantled. And while Victoria addressed these practical concerns, she could not ignore the emotional fallout, particularly among family members whose faith in one another had been shaken, and so she called a family meeting at the Newman estate, inviting Nikki, Jack, Billy, and even Abby to confront the broader implications of Diane's betrayal, not just for Jabot, but for the Newman family legacy itself. And the conversation was tense, filled with unspoken accusations, long-simmering resentments, and the undeniable truth that betrayal by someone like Diane forced every member of the family to reconsider how much trust could ever be given again. While Billy Abbott, caught between loyalty to his sister and pragmatism regarding corporate interests, struggled to find his voice, questioning whether Victoria's confrontational approach might alienate stakeholders or whether a more measured strategy could help contain the damage. And Nikki, ever the matriarchal voice of reason, emphasized the importance of moral clarity, urging her children to see Diane's exposure not as a victory over a rival, but as an opportunity to strengthen the family bond and reinforce ethical leadership at Jabot. While Jack Abbott, with his trademark mixture of cynicism and strategic insight, offered his analysis of Diane's moves, noting where she had exploited weaknesses in corporate governance and suggesting measures to prevent similar manipulations in the future. And amidst this family dialogue, tensions flared as old wounds resurfaced, accusations of past business missteps, questions about personal loyalties, and memories of prior betrayals created a charged atmosphere where every statement seemed to carry double meaning. Yet through it all, Victoria's resolve hardened, her vision for Jabot's recovery taking shape not just as a financial plan, but as a mission to restore trust, integrity, and morale. And she immediately began implementing a series of measures to stabilize the company, from revising corporate policies to auditing all financial transactions, to meeting individually with department heads to ensure transparency and accountability. And, as she worked tirelessly, Diane, refusing to be fully defeated, continued her own maneuvers, albeit with diminishing returns, quietly meeting with potential investors in the hope of finding a foothold outside Jabot, attempting to form alliances that could allow her to regain influence. and planting subtle rumors that Victoria's aggressive tactics could destabilize the company further. But each move Diane made was met with Victoria's unwavering vigilance, informed by meticulous tracking of communications, oversight of every transaction, and counsel from trusted allies, leaving Diane increasingly isolated as her network of influence crumbled. And as the days turned into weeks, the tension in Genoa City escalated, with socialites, media pundits, and industry insiders speculating about the outcome of this high-stakes corporate battle, gossip columns dissecting every public appearance, and local news outlets running segment after segment analyzing the potential implications for Jabot and the Newman family, while Victoria, despite the exhaustion and emotional strain, remained a symbol of resilience, projecting calm, strength, and unwavering commitment to both her family and the company. And this projection became critical as shareholders, employees, and media observers looked to her for leadership during a period of extraordinary uncertainty. Yet even as Victoria took command of the situation, the personal toll became increasingly apparent, as sleepless nights, tense negotiations, and the constant scrutiny of every move began to weigh heavily, and moments of doubt surfaced, brief flashes of insecurity where she questioned whether she had the capacity to lead Jabot through this storm, only for her resolve to be reinforced by the loyalty and support of those who believed in her vision. And while Victoria worked tirelessly, the human consequences of Diane's betrayal became clear, particularly in the strained relationships among employees who had unknowingly been complicit or manipulated, from accountants who had followed Diane's instructions without knowing the full context, to executives who had been subtly coerced into decisions that now reflected poorly on them. And Victoria, understanding that leadership required more than corporate acumen, reached out to these individuals, offering transparency, empathy, and guidance to help them regain confidence and a sense of professional integrity. And this delicate balance of accountability and compassion further solidified her authority and moral standing, even as Diane's presence lingered like a shadow over every boardroom discussion, every financial report, and every strategic decision. Her reputation now damaged but her ambition unrelenting. And as Victoria coordinated with legal counsel to pursue actions that would hold Diane accountable, she also understood the importance of managing perception, both within Jabot and externally, ensuring that stakeholders, clients, and the public recognize the full scope of Diane's duplicity and Victoria's decisive leadership. And in parallel, Victoria leveraged her personal relationships to strengthen the company's resilience, from reconnecting with former Jabot allies who had left during turbulent periods, to engaging with investors who had been hesitant, building a coalition that would support the company through recovery and signal stability to the broader market. And even as this strategic work progressed, Diane attempted increasingly bold, risky maneuvers, from seeking back-channel influence with key board members, to trying to manipulate stock trading to her advantage, but each attempt was systematically countered by Victoria's careful oversight, leaving Diane to operate in shrinking circles of influence, each move more desperate than the last. And as the confrontation between Victoria and Diane reached its peak, personal stakes intertwined with corporate interests, creating moments of intense drama, from emotional confrontations in private offices to tense public exchanges at shareholder meetings, where Diane, still trying to assert control, faced off against Victoria's unwavering evidence and strategic brilliance, each verbal volley met with counterarguments grounded in irrefutable facts, the energy in the room electric, the stakes impossibly high. And yet through every challenge, Victoria's composure and clarity inspired confidence among those around her, solidifying alliances and empowering others to act with courage and integrity, while Diane, increasingly isolated, began to make errors, misjudging reactions, overplaying influence, and revealing additional facets of her manipulation that Victoria was able to leverage strategically. And as this multilayered struggle unfolded, other Genoa City residents became entwined in the drama, from former romantic partners to business rivals, each bringing their own motivations, alliances, and histories into the mix, further complicating the narrative. And through all of this, Victoria's determination never wavered, her vision for Jabot's future crystallizing into a roadmap that combined financial recovery, ethical governance, and the rebuilding of trust, not just as a business imperative, but as a moral responsibility to her employees, family, and the city that had watched the Newman legacy unfold over generations. And as Diane's influence finally waned, Victoria orchestrated a series of public and private measures to permanently safeguard Jabot from similar schemes, revising governance structures, implementing transparency protocols, and establishing a culture of accountability, ensuring that the company would emerge stronger, more resilient, and more ethically grounded. And as the dust settled, Genoa City slowly absorbed the lessons of betrayal, ambition, and resilience, observing how even in the face of calculated treachery, integrity, courage, and strategic foresight could restore balance and stability, leaving Diane to confront the consequences of her actions, while Victoria, reinforced by experience, family support, and unwavering determination, positioned herself not just as a survivor, but as a leader whose legacy would define Jabot's future and serve as a lasting testament to the power of perseverance in the dramatic, endlessly twisting world of the young and the restless.